Hey, how about it, race fans? Richard Allen of motorsportsreport.net coming at you with the Rich's Rambling. This is sort of a go-between Rich's Rambling. I'm coming in at you between the Southern All-Star Spring Nationals race at Cherokee Speedway, which was held last weekend, and then upcoming this weekend, we have races with the World of Outlaws and the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series in action in various parts of the country. So thought we'd kind of take a look back and forward as far as those races are concerned. And I want to start off with the races held at Cherokee. I've got to give a lot of major props, some kudos to Ray Cook, the Spring Nationals, the Southern All-Stars, and the Cherokee Speedway for hustling up with the weather approaching to be able to get that race past halfway so they could get it in. I know it would have been disappointing for me if I'd have driven all that way. It takes with the road construction work on I-40 through the gorge there between North Carolina and Tennessee. A drive that used to be around 3 hours now takes closer to 4 to get through all that mess. So it would have been disappointing to drive 4 hours one way to wind up seeing a race get rained out. So kudos to them for getting in hustle up mode and getting that race in. Another thing about that race, Chris Madden, who has had great speed all season so far with the Wells Motorsports Infinity Race Cars car. They won right off the bat with the World of Outlaws down at the Sunshine Nationals in Volusia Speedway. Then they just went through some terrible luck. They've had speed all season, but like, for example, a couple of weeks ago with the World of Outlaws at Smoky Mountain Speedway, had definitely a podium finishing car, potentially a winning car, and got caught up in that huge wreck where he had Dennis Erb Jr. Got spun out and stalled right there in the middle of the track, and Brandon Overton and Chris Madden came along with nowhere to go and just sort of piled in. That damaged all the cars involved. So Madden's team had to work through some of that, but he came out really dominating in the Ginger Owens Memorial March Madness race there at Cherokee Speedway. He led all the way, started right up front. I think, he's so good at tire management at that place. Even if they'd run the full 60 laps, which I think they ran lap 42 or 44, somewhere in there, I think he still probably would have been the winner. He had such a dominant car. And like I say, he's so good at tire management, I think he would have made it to the end, as he's done so many times, even in those 100-lap races like the Blue-Gray 100. But now, moving on to looking forward, the World of Outlaws Late Model Series has spent a lot of time here in the Southeast. The National Tours a lot of times get criticized because they don't spend much time in the Southeast. Well, they've been all throughout Florida. And then, of course, they had that weekend which they were at Volunteer Speedway in Bulls Gap, Tennessee, and then at Smoky Mountain Speedway in Maryville, Tennessee. Spent last weekend at Magnolia down in Mississippi. And coming up this weekend, they're going to be at East Alabama Motor Speedway and then move over to Sonoa Raceway in just south of Atlanta. So they've got a lot of racing to do, and they've done a lot of racing in the Southeast, and they'll be back to the Southeast after making a quick trip next weekend up to Farmer City in Illinois. They'll be back at Talladega Short Track later on in the year too. So the World of Outlaws have not abandoned the Southeast for sure, and nor have the Lucas Oil guys either. They still run some races here. But the thing I want to address, and I just wrote a piece on it, you can find it on motorsportsreport.net, the World of Outlaw drivers who are not named Bobby Pierce and Nick Hoffman run the risk of kind of falling out of contention, even here this early in the season. Last year, Pierce and Hoffman drove away from the rest of the field. Those two finished. It was a pretty tight battle for them right down to the World Finals, but everybody else was far back by that time. Well, now Pierce is, I believe, 14 points ahead of Hoffman, and Hoffman's 100 points ahead of third place, which is Tim McCready. You're really running the risk of falling out of contention even this early. You say, it's too early to worry about that. The problem for everybody else is the way Hoffman and Pierce can just pile up top fives and top tens. Those two drivers have not finished outside the top 10 all season long. They've had, I think, either 11 or 12 races, and they've been in the top 10 every race. And still, like, Hoffman has 10 top fives, Pierce has 9 top fives. Both of them have 3 wins. You can't. It's hard to give up points this early in the season and then try to catch up to guys who just continually pile up good finishes. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on with the World of Outlaws here this weekend at East Alabama and Sonoa. If Pierce and Hoffman can just continue to build their lead, they're going to be really hard to catch down the stretch, and especially you get up in those tracks up in the Midwest like Farmer City and places like that where the World of Outlaws go. Bobby Pierce is so good up there, and Nick Hoffman won about 1 million modified races up there, and I wrote a story on him on motorsportsreport.net back a week or so ago in which he talked about how he's starting to find the level of comfort in a late model that he had in the modified back several years ago. And if that's true, boy, the competition better look out, because he won everything in modifieds when he did that. And then Lucas Oil is going to be in action this weekend. They're racing at Atomic in Brownstown. The Atomic race had been scheduled for Friday. It's been moved to Sunday. Brownstown's still on for Saturday. So they'll race, instead of racing Friday and Saturday, they'll race Saturday and Sunday this week. It's be the first time in action since Georgia and Florida. So it's almost a month. It's 3 weeks at least since Lucas Oil was down at Golden Isle Speedway in Georgia. So return to action for them. Hudson O'Neal and Devin Moran slipping away. It's kind of like we talked about. The Lucas Series is pretty star-laden. It's got quite a few big stars, but still nonetheless, those 2 drivers are kind of threatening to slip away from the rest of the pack. Brandon Overton's in 3rd. Then Clay Harris, really a surprise here early in the season. He's keeping pace up there in 4th. So, but they run the risk of falling far enough behind because again, just like we talked about with Pierce and Hoffman with the World of Outlaws, O'Neal and Moran are not going to stack up a bunch of poor finishes. They're just going to keep on throwing those top fives at you, top five. And it's difficult to gain points on guys like that. So, and one thing that both of these series, the weekend shows now, the real season is now here. It's where we've gotten to the point where the calendar is going to be full basically from now on. We had speed weeks, and you take some breaks, get a break from speed weeks to the rest of the season and all that. Well, now it's the rest of the season. So now it's on where you're going to have basically wall-to-wall racing, not only on weekends or throughout the year. There's going to be some midweek races and all that stuff as well. But, as I said before, you think, it's too early to be worrying about points and who's going to be ahead. But when you've got 2 guys in each series that are showing they can win all the time and they can run top 5 and top 10, you can't catch guys if you spot them a big lead like that. And on the Lucas side, you've had Moran and O'Neal won 3 races. Jonathan Davenport, who's not running the full series, has 3 wins as well. And the problem for the guys trying in pursuit is that there are so many big stars. Lucas Oil is so thick with talent that it's difficult to make a run when you've got so many people that you have to beat that are so good. So that's something to consider too. But I'll be watching. This will be the first weekend in 3 or 4 weeks that I haven't been at a track. I'll just be watching from afar here this week. My daughter plays lacrosse for Seymour High School, so we'll be watching some of that too. So hopefully that'll go well, and then hopefully we get all this racing in. We don't have any weather interruptions or anything of that nature. But until next time, this is Richard Allen of motorsportsreport.net saying I will see you at the track.